Welcome back to another episode of HealthCap Weekly Wrap. We've got a packed one today. We're talking about an investigation into senior care communities calling 911 for resident lift assists, a workforce-focused policy update from McKnight's Senior Living, a combined look at what Generation X is telling us about the future of aging from the Mather Institute, and we'll close with a really human topic around pets and well-being, also from Mather. So, a lot to cover, but all very relevant.
Yeah, and honestly kind of a perfect snapshot of what the industry is dealing with right now. Risk, workforce pressure, what's coming next, and then how quality of life fits into all of it.
Exactly. All right, let's jump in with the Fox 9 Minneapolis story because this one has gotten a lot of attention. Fox 9 reports that senior care communities are increasingly adopting no-lift policies and relying on 911 for non-emergency lift assists when residents fall.
Oh, for non-emergencies?
Yeah, so not medical crises, not injuries necessarily. It's situations where a resident needs help getting up, and staff are either not permitted or not trained to assist, so they call emergency services instead. Fox 9 talked to first responders who say they're getting repeat calls from the same communities.
That feels like a red flag on a few levels.
It really is. And Fox 9 frames it around resident care, staffing and training gaps, strain on first responders, and accountability. From a senior care perspective, it raises tough questions about what happens when operational policies collide with real-life resident needs.
Yeah, because on paper, no-lift policies are about protecting staff from injury, right?
Exactly. They came from a good place, reducing staff injuries, workers' comp claims, all of that. But what Fox 9 is highlighting is the downstream effect. Residents are left waiting longer on the floor, fire departments are frustrated, and families are starting to ask questions.
Yeah, I can imagine a family hearing that 911 was called because someone couldn't help their loved one up and thinking, wait, what?
Totally. And the takeaway for listeners is not that no lift policies are wrong across the board, but that policies have consequences. Senior care leaders need to look at whether staffing levels, training, and equipment actually align with those policies. And from a risk standpoint, relying on emergency responders for routine care is not a sustainable model.
And Fox 9 being a local news outlet, this isn't ancient history. This is ongoing.
Right. It's current, and it's likely happening in more markets than just the one they covered. So this is one where listeners should be asking, could this be us? And if so, what needs to change?
Okay, let's pivot from that into workforce because it actually connects pretty naturally. McKnight's Senior Living recently covered the reintroduction of federal legislation aimed at lifting CNA training lockout provisions during enforcement actions.
Yeah, I read that one. This is a bit wonky, but important.
Very wonky, but important. So McKnight's reports that under current rules, when a senior care community is under certain enforcement actions, they can be blocked from offering CNA training programs. The proposed legislation would remove or ease those restrictions.
So basically, when you're already struggling, you're not allowed to train more people?
That's the issue, and the argument from supporters of the bill is that this actually worsens workforce shortages. Communities that want to grow their own talent can't do it when they arguably need it most.
That feels counterproductive.
Yeah, and McKnight points out that this bill has been introduced before, so this isn't brand new. But it's still very relevant because workforce shortages haven't improved meaningfully. If anything, they're more acute.
And tying it back to that Fox 9 story, staffing and training gaps show up everywhere.
Exactly. When communities don't have enough trained staff, the impact ripples out. Residents wait longer, policies get stricter, and care becomes more reactive instead of proactive.
So what should listeners take from this McKnight's piece?
A couple things. One, policy matters. What happens in Washington directly affects what's possible on the ground. Two, leaders should stay engaged with these conversations even if they feel distant. And three, training is not just an HR issue, it's a care quality and risk issue.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit because we're going to talk about the future. So the Mather Institute has been releasing findings from its Gen Xperience Study over time. We're pulling from year 2 of the study and a more recent report 3. Some of this data is a little older, but it's still very relevant. And in some cases, even more relevant now.
Right? So, big picture, Mather Institute's national research looks at Generation X's expectations around aging, housing, and care. And the message is pretty clear. Gen X is different.
How so?
Well, according to Mather, Gen X is more skeptical, more cost-conscious, and less trusting of traditional institutions. They want flexibility, transparency, and control. They're not automatically buying into traditional senior care models.
Yeah, I remember one of the themes being, I don't want to move unless it really makes sense for me.
Exactly. And Report 3 goes deeper into trust and affordability. It highlights that Gen X is watching how senior care performs right now. How communities handle staffing, communication, and care today will shape whether Gen X ever considers those options.
So they're paying attention.
Very much so, and that's why this matters to current operators. Even though Gen X isn't the primary resident base yet, their perceptions are being formed now.
What should listeners take away from this combined Gen X conversation?
I'd say 3 things. 1, Gen X expects customization, not one size fits all. 2, they care deeply about value, not just cost. And 3, trust is earned through transparency and consistency.
And this isn't just marketing, right?
No, it's operations. It's how you communicate during challenges. It's how you treat residents and staff. Mather Institute's research is basically saying the future resident is watching how you behave today.
That's a little sobering.
Yeah, but also empowering, because it means actions now can shape demand later.
All right, let's close on a more human note. The last piece comes from the Mather Institute as well. Their orange paper on pets and well-being.
I loved this one.
Me too. So Mather Institute explores the physical, emotional, and social benefits pets bring to older adults. Things like reduced loneliness, increased activity, and stronger social connections.
And this isn't just anecdotal.
No, they back it up with research. Pets can lower stress, encourage routine, and even act as social bridges between residents.
I've seen that in real life. A dog walks into a room and suddenly everyone's talking.
Exactly. And for senior care communities, the paper talks about how to support pet-inclusive living thoughtfully, not just allowing pets, but planning for them.
Yeah, because there are operational considerations.
Right. Allergies, mobility, care planning. But the takeaway is that pets are not just a nice perk. They're part of well-being. And as senior care becomes more person-centered, this matters.
And this ties back to Gen X too, honestly.
Totally. Gen X is more likely to see pets as family. So communities that figure this out now are better positioned for the future.
So if you're listening and thinking, this feels like a softer topic, it's actually strategic.
Very much so. Quality of life is a differentiator. And Mather Institute makes a strong case that pets play a role in that.
All right, let's bring it home. Today we talked about a Fox 9 investigation into no-lift policies and 911 calls, a workforce policy update from McKnight's Senior Living, insights from the Mather Institute on Generation X, and research on pets and well-being.
A lot, but all connected.
Exactly. It's all about how senior care communities care for residents today while preparing for tomorrow.
Thanks for spending part of your week with us. And if you want more insight and perspective, be sure to check out Angie's blog at healthcapusa.com/Angie's-blog.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.